Great. Okay, yeah, well, very, very good to see you all, as I say. What we're exploring at the moment is a particular theme called the practice of internationality that we've been doing. This is the third week of 4 or 5 weeks. And I've been avoiding explaining what on earth the practice of internationality is and hoping that in the process of the evening it will become clear. But we're looking at, in order to explore that practice, we're looking at a sutta of the Buddha's called the Majjhipindika Sutta, the Honeyball Sutta, which is basically the Buddha's analysis of social conflict, which is really, really interesting. So we're looking at that sort of area. And in that sutta, he basically says his teaching, the Dharma, is what leads to quarrelling with nobody in the entire world. That's what he says, which is a really, really interesting take, isn't it, on a spiritual doctrine. But that's what he says. So you can see the kind of link with the theme of internationality there. But yeah, we're really looking at sort of this area, this crucial area crucial to human life of kind of conflict, breakdown in communication. And I want to sort of broaden that out from merely sort of clashing with people to actually no-go areas. One friend was saying that he, works with someone from a very different culture, and they get on fine, but they've got this kind of, we just don't talk about particular things. They go off on Sunday and do something completely different from what he does, and it's just never talked about. And maybe that's okay, but the particularly in the spiritual community, actually that stops short of what we're aiming to do. Ultimately, where we're directed with spiritual community is friendship, and in friendship there are no-go areas, no-go zones. That's where we're sort of headed with spiritual community, and the reason for that is that actually no-go zones sort of when conditions change can end up with conflict. Actually, it's only if you've kind of been into that sort of those sorts of no-go zones that you can communicate no matter what comes up. Anyway, what we've been looking at the last couple of weeks is really the analysis of how we kind of come to find ourselves in social conflict. And what I want to talk about this week is not just the analysis, but kind of what do we do? How can we actually act in a way that means we become a harmonious person? That's the title, Becoming a Harmonious Person Anywhere in the World. That's the ideal. It's a big ideal. Basically, the answer is you need to become a Buddha. So there we are. We can all go home. Yeah, but before going into that, sort of how do we act, I'll need to sort of recap. Those of you who've been here each week will be getting tired of the recap, but there we are. It's worth covering again and again. So I hope you can start to see this. So in red, this is a sort of sequence of conditions that I think actually probably I'll put some of them in Pali and some of them in Sanskrit, so I hope there aren't any scholars with us this evening, but there we are. But yeah, it's a sequence of conditions that leads to kind of social conflict, so that's what we've been exploring. And in blue I've put the translation, the English translation. So so Sparsha Vedana Samya, that being contact, because we are beings with sense experience, we come into contact through our senses with other people, other things. That's what this is talking about, just that initial experience of contact. But in a way, I'm drawing from Subhuti, a much-loved teacher in our tradition, and he calls this whole this whole starting place, primary experience. So he's basically saying, actually, this is just sort of our ordinary experience. Like right now, here we are, there's a floor underneath us, there's people, there's mats, there's cushions, just kind of coming back to our ordinary experience. All too often we're off somewhere else, aren't we? We're not actually with our ordinary experience. And that ordinary experience brings us into contact with things through visual sense, auditory sense, all our senses. And the point is that whatever we come into contact with is accompanied by this quality of Vedana, which is pleasantness, unpleasantness, or it's so faint that we can't really distinguish either. So that is kind of built into all experience. Mostly it's too faint for us to notice that. We only notice it when something really unpleasant or something really pleasant happens. But it's built into life. And samya is perception. It seems a bit of a kind of duplication really with contact, but actually the point is that there's an aspect of coming into contact which is cognitive, that is recognition. Occasionally you experience contact without recognition, you don't quite know. Actually, it happened to me earlier. I looked at something down there, I thought it was a pen, it wasn't, it was the leg of the... So recognition, I'd come into contact with what I thought was a pen, but it wasn't a pen. Samya had gone awry. Anyway, the point is, this is kind of our primary experience, and it's what's shared with the animal kingdom, but what we have as well as that is vitarka, is our capacity to think, to reason. And this dotted line is the sphere of mindfulness. So mindfulness includes vitarka, thoughts like, I'm getting a bit anxious, I'll come back to the body. That is part of mindfulness. So this is sort of where the spiritual life is lived out. But in the sequence, if we come into contact with something, the point is that it'll probably prompt thought. And if there's thought, it's likely that we'll stray over into this key word. This is really the sort of nub of the teaching, this key word prapancha, which can be translated as alienated thinking or unaware thinking. It's a bit small, isn't it? It's this very familiar experience when you sit down to meditate and there are thoughts kind of churning through your head, and you're not thinking, you are being thought, this automatic thinking. So it's automatic, kind of driven thinking, this prapancha. And the point with the word alienated is that vitarka, reason, kind of points back, refers back to actual experience, whereas prapancha just goes off. It's not actually kind of checking, is what I'm thinking referred to experience? It's just kind of churning away under its own sort of mad logic. So that's what tends to happen. It happens particularly, it happens on the basis of Vedana. We come into contact with something, if that's a bit unpleasant, a critical email or something, or critical text or something, unpleasant Vedana, that's accompanied by an unpleasant Vedana. And prapancha is kind of automatically trying to work that out. What should I do? What's happened? often we don't completely know what's happened, do we? We just get this text, what's going on. And prapancha is kind of this automatic kind of driven thinking, trying to work that out. So let me just check my notes a moment. Yeah, so we don't really know why we're doing this very often, do we? We don't know what's got us thinking, but we can't kind of stop it. We probably know that something's bothering us, but why is it our minds kind of do this? And what prapancha is kind of trying to do is it's casting around, trying to make connections in order to construct a view of the world, a sort of that makes sense of this particular experience. That's what prapancha is kind of trying to do. So casting around to make connections, to kind of construct a interpretive construction. That's what prapancha samya sankar could be translated as. So yeah, this point about kind of making connections, perhaps I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment, but the point is Subhuti kind of terms this kind of secondary experience. So without choosing to, our mind is kind of thinking, kind of building connections. It's building connections like you get that text, oh, this has happened before. So there we are. We're kind of building a connection with some sort of previous memory. That might then be building another connection, kind of that's not particularly conscious, that this is what happens in my life. You know, so you're starting to draw in your psychology. So this is what prapancha does. So it's really not thinking. It's kind of just building all sorts of connections according to its own sort of logic. But its aim is to try and construct a view of the world that kind of somehow gives us a way of, or gives us an interpretation that we can sort of act on, to kind of deal with what's come up. So on the basis of that, we come up with some sort of interpretive construction. We know not what. It's all sort of automatic, or often going on just below the level of awareness, a level of consciousness. But actually, we then act from that. So that's this next kind of link. So that's what I want to explore today. But one thing that happens with this, oddly, is the way we act. Then comes back into contact with, if it's a person, the person we send the text. It comes back into contact with a person. It has this uncannily frequent consequence of somehow kind of confirming our underlying view of the situation. It's really, really spooky almost how frequently it does this. So an example is, if a sort of marginalised minority in society, something happens, you lose your job or something like that, Vedana, sense of feeling a sense of injustice. That kind of works through prapancha into a sort of set sense. Well, I suppose a sense of injustice is a kind of underlying view, isn't it? If you then act out of that, you're likely to sort of towards someone who seems to be the responsible, the perpetrator, you're likely to act in a kind of hostile kind of way. And then that hostility is likely to be perceived as confirming the sort of the prejudice towards that minority. Yeah, do you see what I mean? So there are an infinite number of kind of different examples, but I find it uncanny how frequently when we act from that, it somehow seems to kind of confirm our underlying view. There will be examples where it doesn't seem to do that, and we'll probably just ignore them because they don't fit in with our underlying view, rather than go, "Oh, hang on a minute, maybe the way I see this isn't quite right." Anyway, just to introduce these two terms, that what we need to do is kind of realise we're in prapancha, or we're bringing a particular view, view to our experience, and come back to our primary experience. That's what mindfulness is. That's the invitation. That's what the Buddha is recommending us to do. So moving from, acknowledging we're in secondary experience and coming back to primary experience. So, I'll say a bit more about this in a moment, but in a way, one thing the Buddha is saying is that actually we get into conflict because of prapancha, because of our automatic thinking. It's quite a proposition, isn't it? Mostly we think that automatic thinking is kind of pretty innocuous, doesn't hurt anyone, blah, 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 blah. But actually he's saying, no, that kind of, that tendency is kind of, is shaping a world that will inevitably lead to conflict. Maybe not now, but actually that is the direction of travel. So that's quite a statement. And last week I was looking at kind of, why is that? So just to recap very briefly that, I was just drawing from anthropology a particular finding about what distinguishes us as human beings. So what distinguishes us is that we've got a cognitive difference to other species, and that cognitive difference is shared intentionality. So basically we are built such that we can collaborate. That is our sort of evolutionary leap forward, collaboration. What this study shows is that in order to do that, you need a much greater degree of abstraction, the ability to abstract. In actual fact, we collaborate by abstracting a kind of shared representation of the task we're collaborating over. That includes a representation of you, and you have you and your particular role in this task, and a representation of me and my particular role in that task. So that's a lot of abstracting. It's a whole load of abstracting. But that is our human world, isn't it? That is our human world. It's so noticeable. There's a me and there's a you, and we're kind of in this together. And the task being a simple task of a conversation, or the task being a kind of work project, the task being running a country. You can scale up or scale down. But essentially, we manage to cooperate through our ability to abstract the task and abstract a kind of you and me. So that that is kind of, I suppose, one way of putting this, as I was thinking about it, is that actually abstraction is sort of the habitat, if you like, of our human world. That's what enables us to live this distinctively human life, collaborative kind of life. It's actually abstraction. So for me, that really gets to why this is so kind of powerful and problematic, powerful both ways. So the thing about this is often we think we're thinking, often we think it's useful, when in actual fact we're not here at all. What Prapancha is trying to do, often it's trying to kind of repair the world which we inhabit, this sort of collaborative kind of world. There's something that's happened that's sort of upset our place in the world or our environment. And really this is trying to repair that habitat, in which we kind of live. So it seems like we're thinking, it seems like an individual process, but actually it's not. It's not at all. It's kind of concerned with our habitat. So we're trying to repair or defend or extend the kind of habitat, the sort of social habitat in which we live. And that might seem dubious. For example, kind of we can be, the sort of Prapancha we can be sort of self-critical, for example, so you're thinking, well, what's that got to do? But actually, if you look at it, even self-critical thought is kind of trying to address some way in which we don't fit in. It's trying to sort of rectify our place in the world. If I could just be like this, then I could kind of fit. Do you see what I mean? So that's really what is driving Prapancha. There's this very strong sense of thought being driven with Prapancha. You are not doing it. And it's driven because it reaches all the way back to our kind of survival instincts.
So, Arthasiddhi, when you say it seems like we're thinking but we're not.
Yeah.
You don't mean that we're not thinking. It's like it seems like it's independent thought or something like that. It's
so
not that
yes,
it's habitual thought.
It's Prapancha.
Yes.
Rather than thinking. We usually think I'm reasoning this through. This is valuable, but actually what we're doing is we're kind of unconsciously making all sorts of connections. You don't really know why you're doing that. It's not a sort of individual aware process. Instead, you're being thought. Yeah, so you're wanting to clarify. So in that situation, you're sort of being thought. If you can come back to into awareness, you can start to think. Yeah. So one other point about this point that the abstraction is our human habitat is that actually one thing that Prapancha is connecting is it's kind of drawing from the environment around us. So some of the things that will be going through your head, some of the ideas going through your head, you will probably not even believe, but actually they're starting to kind of form your world. Do you see what I mean? So this process kind of draws, because its aim is to kind of construct a habitat in which we can live with others. Actually, it's going to draw from that habitat unawares. A classic case is political thinking, actually, in that we haven't thought that through. It's not actually our our own sort of reasoning. It's sort of off the peg thinking. It's taken from our environment, and its concern is more this sort of creating a habitat in which we can live, rather than we often sort of dignify ourselves with more thought than is actually really going on. It's a much more unconscious process, mostly, and it's concerned about our own place in the world, our own survival, particularly our own sort of in-group. So this is one of the tricky things, that actually we kind of, we end up dividing, this process leads us to end up to sort of divide into different groups that see the world in different ways. So that's what's meant by this kind of secondary experience. We come to sort of inhabit an environment, and because it's because our sort of this collaborative human, distinctively human world sort of depends on it, we mistake a construct for reality. That's what we do. We go a step further because we sort of depend on this this interpretive construction to kind of live this human life. We go a step further than thinking, oh, this is just a sort of plan, a way we could live together, and we actually just feel it to be reality. Yeah. So one of the consequences of that is that prapancha samya sankhar, because you don't always know, we usually don't know we're in this, but one of the telltale signs is that we start to feel a bit unsettled when one of these views that we're sort of depending on, standing on, is challenged. You start to feel, ooh, so it's not just a kind of an exchange of ideas, you're exploring different options, you start to feel, ooh, you feel a bit sort of unsettled when a particular idea is challenged. Unsettled, or you find yourself kind of insisting on your idea or getting a bit unreasonable. That's a clear indication that what's being challenged is not merely just this proposition of an idea, a thought. It's actually that we are standing on it. Our very existence seems to sort of depend upon it. So do you notice that experience occasionally when somebody says something and if you're honest, if you're mindful, you realise, ooh, that was a bit of an overreaction. What happened there? So that is really useful to identify. That shows that there's some sort of view on which we're standing, on which our sort of sense of the world and our place in it kind of rests. So what the Buddha's saying is that we can practice mindfulness, and mindfulness is the essential solution to the inevitable creating of our unaware minds of kind of habitats that will inevitably clash, collide with someone else's kind of view of the world, other groups. Mindfulness is what we need to do. So that will be just, that involves kind of reason. So it'd be simply kind of realising, ooh, I feel a bit unsettled. There must be some prapancha samya sankhar going on. I will come back to primary experience. Just that simple thought process is kind of taking us back to into mindfulness. That's what's being proposed. That really is the practice of internationality. It's just actually taking a step towards environments that will differ in view and conventions. Put yourself in that sort of environment. That might be just to intensify a friendship with someone from a different culture, or it might be go and live abroad, and then really intensify our mindfulness, because mostly with this we hang around with the same kind of people, and the consequence of that is that our underlying interpretive construction remains underlying. It's never challenged. Everyone else sort of shores up that construct. So you just don't know it's there. And that deepens the sense in which it is reality. You see what I mean? But if you go abroad, it is going to be challenged. It's going to be called into question. And that is really, really helpful. So that's what we mean by the practice of internationality. That if we can do that, then we can start to get back to primary experience, our primary experience. So, as for today, there's the question of what do we do then? If we do realise, if we do manage to come back to this, we were talking about this, weren't we? You realise that you've reacted a bit, you've a bit overreacted, and you come back to your primary experience. Well, you're still left with, what do I do? You know, do I send that text? Do I not send that text? So if you've managed to kind of re-establish mindfulness, there's two things to do, and one is to focus on the lakshanas, and the other is the precepts. So the lakshanas, the three lakshanas are the three marks or characteristics of existence. So they are the characteristics of our primary experience. And there's too much to go into tonight there. If you're really interested, come on one of our Transform Your Life courses to go into those in much more depth. But they are impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and no self. But just to focus on impermanence, that's what we're doing. So we come back to our primary experience, whatever's going on, some sort of uncomfortable Vedana will be there, but we're attending to that experience as something that is impermanent. We're attending to our external experience as something that is impermanent. And that can mean that we deepen our experience of primary experience. Yeah, so primary experience is not a kind of static, it can deepen. And that's what we're doing with the lakshanas, exploring, looking into our experience through this sort of lens of impermanence. So that's one thing we're doing when we come back here. But the second is, how do we act? How do we act? Because this is going to lead you to act in a way that you have not really decided, actually. But it's the way that you always tend to. It's probably based on your previous experience, psychology, all that sort of stuff. So instead, the Buddha gives us the precepts. So that's what I want to look at a bit more, focus a bit more on today. Just checking the time. So the 5 precepts, they're kind of guidelines to how to act. Guidelines or principles how to act. This is in the positive form. They're formulated negatively and positively. Actually, Sangharakshita formulated them positively. So the first precept being love, metta, acting from metta. And then in a way, all the other precepts are a sort of extension of that fundamental principle of Buddhism. So that principle applied to property, applied to the area of sensual experience, sex, but broader than that as well, to speech, speaking truthfully, and to the mind. So here what I wanted to do is focus more on the speech precepts, because these are the 5 precepts, but order members take on 10 precepts, which includes 4 speech precepts, 4 principles. So they are truthfulness, kindliness, helpfulness, and harmonious speech. And one way Sangharakshita unfolds these is that with truthfulness, he says, well, we can come back to just the practice of factual accuracy. Can we actually be factually accurate? Because Prapuncha will not be terribly concerned about that. So coming back to factual accuracy, but it goes deeper than that, because unless we are aware of what our experience is, there's no way that we can truthfully communicate it. So it requires not just the sort of challenge of watching our speech and seeing if we can stay factually accurate, but also developing our awareness so that we can actually communicate ourselves truthfully, can communicate the truth. So that's where he starts, and he unfolds this as a progression, because he says in a way that's not enough. We also need to be aware of who we are communicating to. So you can't really tell the truth in the abstract, because you're telling the truth to somebody, and you need to be aware of that other person as a person in order to really communicate. So that's this aspect of kindliness. So that's deepened. You can see how that's a kind of deepening of speech from mere factual accuracy through to communication. And then actually, if that communication can be not only truthful, but actually helpful, so if we can see communication within this context of growing as human beings, that I'm trying to grow and you're trying to grow, particularly manifest, isn't it, in the spiritual community. I mean, it's kind of part of life, I think, really, but it's particularly manifest in spiritual community. So if we can start to speak from within that sort of purpose, that underlying purpose, then our truthful communication, which is aware of other people, can start to be helpful, and that will naturally lead to being harmonious. So that's really what's being suggested, by the precepts. So I wanted to kind of unfold this a bit, because what we're going to do after the break is actually get into groups, probably groups of 4, maybe we'll just stay in those groups for a short period, and then see if we can identify a cultural convention or view that perplexes us or unsettles us in some way, and see if we can explore that instead of from kind of propuntia, sort of our underlying views, making connections that actually are a bit sort of bit dubious. See if we can explore that together. Choose one particular example and see if we can explore that together. It'd be great if we're in different, there's a variety of cultures in that group. See if we can explore it together through these principles. See if we can get back to, well, what are the facts actually of my primary experience? It may be that the facts are pretty scanty, that actually we've hardly got any experience of the particular culture that we've got a view of. So where has that come from? See if we can get back to the facts. So I'll say a bit more about that how we'll do that after the break. But that's why I wanted to kind of focus on this, so we could actually kind of play with this a bit, experiment with this a bit, and see if we can move. See if we can practice what's being articulated here. Essentially, mindfulness, attending to noticing what's going on with us. Are we unsettled by anything? Really, really good. If we do identify that, it shows that there could be some underlying view, prapancha samya sankha. And explore that together from guided by the ethical principles. So I thought I'd just finish with an example of that in my own experience. Before we have a tea break. We've got time to do that. Hiya.
I have a question. What if the views that unsettle us are actually those that are against precepts?
If the views that unsettle us are against the precepts?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that will be the case, won't it? Mm-hmm. It will be the case, yeah, at times, yeah. And it is tricky, isn't it? It is tricky to know how to relate to that. It's just that if we get unsettled, we're likely to get into prapancha and create some sort of view that's only going to compound the problem. We're going to create some view of those people that act like that actually is going to create division. So that's a very uncomfortable position to be in, but actually what the Buddha is saying is we only have the precepts to go by. If we take any other route, we're going to contribute, going to compound the problem. Yeah, uncomfortable. And very, very difficult actually to do. Yeah. So somehow you have to find a way to approach that situation from love. Yeah, which is easy to say and very, very difficult to do. Yeah, and it probably doesn't mean what we think it means. It doesn't mean being a sort of a pacifist necessarily. Yeah. That's probably. I'm sure it's not solved the problem. Yeah. So. The example I was thinking of giving is a story that I've already told a few times, but Jonathan said, how did that story end? So I thought I'd get it out finally, once and for all, and then leave it. It was the example of an Indian friend of mine and differences of culture. The particular instance was kind of differences of attitude around sticking to dates, sticking to agreements. And I realised I was sort of I was sort of getting unsettled by that, and so I needed to kind of come back to my primary experience, look at what are the facts here, and pick up a particular sort of factual example whereby we'd arranged to do something and then he kind of changed plans, and then just on the basis of love start to explore what was that about, what was going on for him. And it's really great discussion. And it led to him kind of volunteering things about my culture of friendship that perplexed him. As I was mentioning before, he's just sort of really perplexed by if you turn up just before dinner at a friend's unannounced, why they say, "Why didn't you text me?" To him, it's kind of immediately obvious that you would just welcome your friend in, you'd be delighted, you'd put other things down, you'd find enough food, rather than saying, why didn't you let me know? So we managed to sort of get back to the facts, and the effect of that was it took me deeper, and made me realise that for me, at a certain point I said, so if you don't sort of sit to agreement, so how do you ever develop friendship? Because you need to kind of come together regularly to sort of deepen your friendship. And in a way, kind of through talking with him, I'd started to see the connection that I'd made, that sticking to agreements is how you develop friendship. But actually for him, it was different. You develop friendship by responding when your friend turns up unannounced. See what I mean? So it started to show me my prapancha samya sankar, just sort of unconscious assumptions, and what came out of that was starting to see that actually something that I identify with. I sort of identify with being a good friend because I go about it like this. You know, we sort of subtly identify, don't we, with our particular ways of going about things. Actually, he was much stronger than me in other areas. I realised I'm not very good at that actually as a friend. So we were sort of equalised, but more than that, it became apparent that the way I'm approaching friendship is so culturally conditioned. It's just drawn from my habitat, my environment. And so is his. So we were actually kind of pulled into this this kind of similar position whereby actually instead of kind of identifying with a particular way of doing things, I am just a process. My way of going about friendship is just it's just a sort of it's culturally conditioned, i.e., I am a process. Do you see what I mean? So suddenly, I was drawn into the lakshana of impermanence through the discussion, i.e., deeper into primary experience, and so was he. It was a really lovely moment. It's difficult to kind of quite sum up, but it's a bit like actually we were meeting at a deeper point than I meet with my English friends, because actually with my English friends that happens within particular sort of cultural norms that don't get questioned. And I was sort of pulled out of my conditioning. He was pulled out of his conditioning. And we were just sort of there naked of conditioning, if you see what I mean. So the point of contact was actually deeper than I ordinarily very often meet my English friends in. It's really moving moment. But essentially it was the kind of coming together through the precepts of the precepts and the lakshana. I was just I'm a mystery. I'm just a sort of conditioned process. I don't know who I am, and there I am with this other human being that I don't really know who he is, but somehow through seeing that we're both conditioned, there's also something deeper present, something unconditioned, that starts to be felt, be glimpsed, that actually somehow we're the same as well. So that is where this practice of mindfulness is actually kind of pointing, starting to touch what the Buddha's saying is the natural nature of our consciousness if we get rid of all the conditioning and obscurations. So so yeah, we need to be careful with this primary experience, not to think of it as kind of a basic starting point. Actually, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. The Buddha is able to stay constantly with primary experience, never gets drawn into prapancha. So that's the example that I was thinking of sharing, that I hope sort of illustrates the value of sort of intensifying our contact, our interactions with other cultures, but with mindfulness, seeing the opportunity that is there in order that we can kind of start to see reality, the reality of ourselves, and start to share that reality with another human being, which is essentially what spiritual community really is.